The massive crystal dome of the Galactic Council chambers gleamed under artificial starlight. 12 different species sat around the circular table, their forms ranging from the towering silicon-based crystalline delegates to the floating gas bag ethereals. The emergency session had been called by Admiral Zethkar of the Hegemony Fleet, his forearms gesturing wildly as he spoke. "The humans have gone too far this time," Zethkar declared, his translator converting his chittering language into standard galactic. "They've established colonies in the Kepler expanse without permission. 17 worlds that belong to Council space." Commander Velox of the Crystalline Armada shifted in her seat, her body reflecting the chamber's lights like a living prism. "Perhaps we should examine the data more carefully, Admiral. These worlds they've chosen are unusual." She activated the holographic display at the center of the table. Images of barren, hostile planets appeared one by one. New Stalingrad, 4.2 times standard gravity, sulfuric acid storms, surface temperature variations of 200 degrees. New Tokyo, constant radiation levels that would kill most of our species in hours. New Berlin, atmospheric pressure equivalent to being 2 kilometers underwater. The ethereal representative, Wispara, floated closer to the display. Why would any intelligent species choose such worlds? Our surveys marked these planets as uninhabitable death traps. "Because they're primitives," Admiral Zethkar said with a dismissive wave. "Their homeworld is a Class 12 death world. They don't know any better. They probably think all planets are supposed to try to kill them." Laughter rippled around the chamber. The idea that inhabitants of a death world could pose any real threat to civilizations that had mastered faster-than-light travel for thousands of years seemed absurd. Counselor Threx of the Molten Core, Syndicate leaned forward, his rocky exterior glowing orange. "I've reviewed their technology reports. Chemical rockets, metal projectiles, fusion power at best. We were building antimatter reactors when their species was still hunting animals with pointed sticks." "Exactly my point," Zethkar continued. "These humans spread across their local systems like a plague, but they're using technology we abandoned millennia ago. They pose no real military threat. The problem is political." He changed the display to show shipping routes and trade data. "Their expansion into the Kepler expanse disrupts 3 major trade routes. The Merchant Guild is losing profits. Several member species have colonies nearby that are becoming nervous." "What do you propose?" asked Silthara, the snake-like representative of the Scaled Dominion. Her forked tongue tasted the air, reading the chemical signatures of the other delegates' emotions. "A demonstration of superior force," Zethkar replied. "We send a fleet to their largest colony in the disputed space. Make it clear that they need to withdraw. Once they see our ships, our technology, our power, they'll realize they have no choice but to comply." "And if they refuse?" Counselor Threx asked, though his tone suggested he thought the possibility unlikely. "Then we make them understand the consequences of defying the Galactic Council," the Admiral said coldly. "But it won't come to that. No species has ever refused to negotiate once they've seen what we can bring to bear." Commander Velox pulled up more data on her personal display. "Admiral, I'm looking at intelligence reports about human military capabilities. Some of these numbers seem unusual." "In what way?" "Their soldiers operate effectively in environments that would incapacitate our troops. Gravity levels that would crush a hegemony warrior. Radiation that would cook an ethereal atmospheric compositions that would poison a scaled trooper." She paused. "And their equipment seems designed for these conditions as standard." Zethkar waved dismissively. "They adapted to their primitive world. That doesn't make them dangerous to us. Our technology is superior in every way." "But Admiral," Velox persisted, "what if their adaptation gives them advantages we haven't considered? Our weapons and armor are designed for civilized warfare between civilized species. Theirs are apparently designed to function in hell itself." "You're overthinking this, Commander," Threx rumbled. "Superior technology always wins, always. We have energy weapons that can crack planets. They have chemical explosives. We have shields that can deflect stellar radiation. They have metal armor. There is no contest here." The debate continued for another hour, but the outcome was never in doubt. The Galactic Council had faced similar situations dozens of times before. A primitive species would expand beyond their designated boundaries. The Council would send a demonstration fleet, and the primitives would realize their mistake and withdraw peacefully. It was a well-established pattern. "Very well," announced High Counselor Zephix, the ancient ethereal who chaired the session. The motion to dispatch a demonstration fleet to human space is approved by unanimous vote. Admiral Zethkar, you will command a combined fleet of 300 vessels from volunteer member species. 300 ships should be more than sufficient, Zethkar agreed. In fact, it's probably excessive. 50 ships would make the point just as effectively. Better to be certain, Zephix replied. We want to avoid any possibility of misunderstanding. The humans will see our fleet, realize their position is hopeless, and withdraw peacefully. Another successful resolution through superior diplomacy. As the delegates filed out of the chamber, Commander Velox lingered behind, still studying the intelligence reports on her display. Something about the human data troubled her, though she couldn't put her finger on exactly what. The reports showed human colonies not just surviving on Deathworlds, but thriving on them. Their population numbers were growing faster than any theoretical model suggested possible. Their industrial output from these hostile planets exceeded what most Council species could achieve on Garden worlds. Commander, Admiral Zethkar had noticed her delay. Is there something else? Just reviewing the tactical data, Admiral. I want to ensure our approach is appropriate. Your caution is admirable, Velox, but unnecessary. We're dealing with primitives here. Their most advanced weapons are barely more sophisticated than catapults. Our shields could deflect their strongest attacks without strain. Velox nodded, but privately she wondered if they were missing something important. The Council's intelligence network was vast and sophisticated, but it focused on technology, economics, and politics. They measured a species' capability by their industrial capacity, their energy output, their weapons technology. But what if those weren't the right measurements for humans? What if living on a death world had given them capabilities that couldn't be quantified in standard reports? She pushed the thought aside. Admiral Zethkar was right. Superior technology had always been the deciding factor in galactic conflicts. The humans might be tough survivors, but toughness couldn't overcome the fundamental laws of physics. Energy weapons would always defeat metal armor. Antimatter reactors would always outperform fusion plants. Gravitational manipulation would always triumph over chemical rockets. The demonstration fleet would arrive at the human colony, display their overwhelming technological superiority, and the humans would see reason. Another primitive species would learn their place in the galactic order. The system had worked for thousands of years. As Velox finally left the chamber, she tried to shake off her lingering unease. But somewhere in the back of her mind, a small voice wondered what kind of species could not only survive on a death world, but choose to spread to even more hostile planets voluntarily. Perhaps they would find out soon enough. The combined fleet of 300 warships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the new Stalingrad system. Admiral Zethkar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the inevitable victory, watching the tactical display with satisfaction. The human colony world hung before them like a brown and yellow marble, wreathed in sulfuric acid clouds. Impressive fleet. Admiral, commented Captain Mordax of the hegemony destroyer Swift Death. The humans will surrender the moment they see us. Begin standard scanning procedures, Zethkar ordered. I want full intelligence on their defensive capabilities before we make contact. The scanner operator, a young hegemony officer named Kretal, frowned at his display. Admiral, I'm detecting some unusual readings from the planet's surface. What kind of unusual? The mining facilities appear to be constructed with extremely dense materials, much denser than necessary for standard operations, and there are energy signatures that don't match typical civilian infrastructure. Zethkar studied the readings himself, probably just primitive overbuilding. Deathworld species tend to make everything unnecessarily robust because they don't understand proper engineering principles. The fleet moved into standard demonstration formation, a massive wall of ships that would be visible to anyone on the planet's surface. 300 vessels representing the combined military might of a dozen advanced civilizations, armed with weapons that could reduce continents to ash. Open communications, Zethkar commanded. Let's get this over with. The transmission went out on all frequencies, broadcasting in every known language, including the primitive human tongues. The message was simple and had been used successfully for centuries. Surrender now, withdraw peacefully, or face the consequences. The response came faster than expected. Unknown alien vessels, this is Colonel Sarah Chen. New Stalingrad Colonial Defense Force. You are in violation of human territorial space. You have 30 minutes to withdraw to beyond the system's outer marker before we activate defensive measures. Admiral Zethkar blinked in surprise, then began laughing. Several other bridge officers joined in. The idea that 300 primitive colonists would threaten a fleet that could destroy their entire world was absurd. Put me through to their leader, Zethkar ordered, still chuckling. The main screen flickered to life, showing a human female in what appeared to be military uniform. She was sitting in what looked like a command center, completely calm despite facing the largest military force her species had ever encountered. I am Admiral Zethkar of the Galactic Council Fleet. You seem to be confused about your situation, human. We have 300 warships. You have a mining colony on a barely habitable rock. Surrender now and we will allow you to evacuate peacefully. Colonel Chen leaned back in her chair, studying the alien admiral with cool eyes. 28 minutes remaining, Admiral. I suggest you begin your withdrawal. You cannot be serious. Do you have any idea what our weapons could do to your colony? Yes, actually. We've been studying your technology for quite some time. Your energy weapons operate on predictable frequency ranges. Your shields use standard gravitational manipulation. Your propulsion systems rely on exotic matter containment. Chen's expression never changed. 27 minutes. Zethkar felt his amusement turning to anger. You dare to threaten us? Captain Mordax, target their main mining facility with the swift death. Minimum power. Let's give them a demonstration of what they're facing. Targeting now, Admiral, Mordax replied. Firing. A lance of brilliant energy streaked from the destroyer toward the planet's surface. The beam struck what appeared to be a simple mining structure and disappeared completely. What happened? Zethkar demanded. Unknown, Admiral. Sensors show the beam made contact, but there's no damage to the target. On the screen, Colonel Chen checked a chronometer on her wrist. 26 minutes. You just targeted a civilian facility, Admiral. That constitutes an act of war under both human and galactic law. Impossible. Our weapons don't just stop working. Your weapons work fine, Chen replied calmly. Our mining facilities are designed to operate in sulfuric acid storms with 200-degree temperature swings. They're built to withstand conditions that would melt your ships. A low-power energy beam is barely a warm breeze to us. Before Zethkar could respond, alerts began screaming across his ship's bridge. The tactical display showed new contacts emerging from what they had thought were simple industrial structures on the planet's surface. Admiral, Kretel shouted over the alarms. Those weren't mining facilities. They're weapon platforms, massive ones. The first shot came without warning. A projectile moving at a significant fraction of light speed slammed into the swift death shields. The barriers held, but the impact sent the destroyer spinning like a toy. How was that possible? Captain Mordax transmitted, fighting to regain control of his ship. That was just a metal projectile. A metal projectile moving at 12% light speed. Chen's voice came through clearly despite the chaos. We call them kinetic kill vehicles. Simple physics, Admiral. Mass times velocity equals dead alien warship. More shots erupted from the planet's surface. The humans weren't using energy weapons or exotic technologies. They were literally throwing chunks of metal at the fleet, but throwing them so fast and with such precision that they hit like antimatter bombs. Return fire, Zethkar ordered. All ships maximum power. The fleet's response was immediate and overwhelming. Hundreds of energy beams, plasma bolts, and gravitational missiles streaked toward the planet. The display showed multiple direct hits on the human positions. When the light cleared, the human weapon platforms were still there. Still intact. Still firing. Damage report, Zethkar demanded. Swift Death reports major shield damage. Crimson Blade has lost main engines. Starpiercer is reporting hull breaches on 3 decks. On the screen, Colonel Chen checked her chronometer again. 23 minutes, Admiral. Our defensive installations are designed to survive direct asteroid impacts. Your energy weapons are impressive light shows, but they're not going to scratch our defenses. This is impossible, Zethkar muttered. We have the most advanced military technology in the galaxy. You have advanced technology designed for fighting other advanced civilizations, Chen corrected. We have simple technology designed to survive in hell itself. There's a difference. The tactical situation was becoming clear, and it wasn't good for the Galactic Fleet. The humans were using weapons that were essentially just very fast rocks, but they were firing them from platforms built to withstand planetary-scale natural disasters. Meanwhile, the alien ships were designed for civilized warfare, fast, maneuverable, with sophisticated but relatively delicate systems. Admiral, Commander Velox's voice came through from the crystal harmony. Recommend we withdraw to reconsider our approach. Withdraw? From primitives with metal projectiles. Primitives who are currently winning, Admiral. Another wave of kinetic projectiles slammed into the fleet. This time, the Nebula Dancer, an ethereal cruiser, couldn't get its shields up in time. The metal slug punched through the ship's hull like it was tissue paper, and the cruiser began venting atmosphere. 18 minutes, Colonel Chen announced. Though I should mention, Admiral, that our reinforcement fleet from New Berlin will arrive in approximately 6 hours. They've been practicing formation flying with ships built for 9 times standard gravity. I suspect they're even less impressed by energy weapons than we are. Admiral Zethkar stared at the tactical display in growing horror. His overwhelming demonstration of superior force was turning into a disaster. Worse, the humans were making it look easy. Signal general withdrawal, he ordered quietly. Admiral, general withdrawal. All ships withdraw to jump distance immediately. As the Galactic Fleet began its retreat, Colonel Chen's voice followed them. Thank you for the demonstration, Admiral. We'll be sure to include your tactics in our training exercises. Safe travels. The last thing Zethkar saw before jumping to hyperspace was those impossible human weapon platforms, still intact, still operational, still pointing at where his fleet had been. For the first time in his career, Admiral Zethkar wondered if the Galactic Council had made a serious mistake. 3 days after the first contact disaster at New Stalingrad, Admiral Zethkar's remaining fleet held position at the edge of the system, licking their wounds and trying to understand what had gone wrong. The Admiral paced his bridge like a caged animal, studying damage reports and tactical analyses. Status report, he demanded for the 5th time that morning. Commander Velox looked up from her station aboard the Crystal Harmony. 17 ships with major damage, 4 requiring complete engine replacement. The Nebula Dancer is barely holding atmosphere. Morale across the fleet is problematic. The crews are asking how primitives with metal projectiles defeated the most advanced fleet in the galaxy. Captain Mordax reported from the Swift Death. I don't have a good answer for them. Before Zethkar could respond, his communications officer interrupted. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the human colony. They're requesting permission to send a medical team to assist our damaged vessels. They want to help us? Zethkar was incredulous. After we attacked them? Apparently so, sir. The transmission is from someone called Dr. Martinez. She says they have medical supplies and equipment designed for extreme conditions that might be more effective than our standard emergency systems. Zethkar was about to refuse when Commander Velox spoke up. Admiral, the Nebula Dancer's crew is in critical condition. Our medical teams can't reach them because of the toxic atmosphere leak. Perhaps. Fine, Zethkar snapped. But I want full sensor monitoring of any human vessels that approach our ships. An hour later, a small human craft approached the damaged ethereal cruiser. It was an ugly, blocky thing that looked more like a flying brick than a proper spacecraft. But it moved with surprising grace through the debris field, apparently untroubled by the radiation and toxic gases that were forcing the other rescue ships to keep their distance. How are they operating in that environment? Asked Captain Yathara from the Nebula Dancer. The radiation levels would cook my crew in minutes, and the chemical contamination should be eating through their ship's hull. The human medical team didn't seem bothered by conditions that were forcing trained galactic rescue specialists to retreat. They docked with the damaged cruiser and immediately began working in areas that the ship's own crew had been forced to abandon. Dr. Elena Martinez led the medical team through the Nebula Dancer's corridors, her simple environmental suit functioning perfectly in conditions that had disabled the ship's sophisticated life support systems. Behind her, Marine Corporal Jackson Torres carried medical equipment that seemed remarkably robust compared to the delicate instruments the ethereals normally used. This way, Captain Yathara said, floating alongside them. His gaseous form was contained within an emergency pressure suit. The injured are in Section C, but I must warn you, the radiation levels there are extreme. Define extreme, Dr. Martinez asked casually. Lethal to most species within 10 minutes of exposure. That's not too bad. We've got maybe an hour before it becomes uncomfortable for us. She checked her handheld scanner, A simple device that somehow worked perfectly despite the electromagnetic interference that was disrupting the ship's own sensors. Torres, break out the heavy-duty medkit. These folks are going to need some serious help. What followed amazed Captain Yathara. The human medical team worked efficiently in conditions that would have killed most galactic species. Their equipment, while simple by Council standards, was incredibly reliable. Where sophisticated medical scanners failed due to interference, the humans' basic instruments continued functioning. Where advanced pharmaceutical compounds broke down due to radiation, their simple chemical treatments remained effective. Your medicine is quite robust, Yathara observed as Dr. Martinez treated an ethereal crewman with what appeared to be a basic chemical injection. Everything we make has to work on Earth first, she explained. High radiation, extreme temperatures, caustic atmospheres, crushing gravity. If it can't function reliably in those conditions, it's useless to us. Meanwhile, on the planet's surface, Colonel Sarah Chen was receiving reports from her subordinates about the ongoing situation. The humans had been monitoring galactic communications and were learning interesting things about their visitors. Their ships are faster and more maneuverable than ours, reported Captain Liu from the orbital defense platform. But they're also more fragile. Their hulls are designed for normal space operations, not combat damage. What about their ground forces? Chen asked. That's where it gets interesting. We intercepted some of their tactical discussions. Their standard infantry operates in what they call controlled environments. Basically, they need perfect conditions to fight effectively. Standard gravity, comfortable temperature, breathable atmosphere, minimal radiation. Chen nodded. And if those conditions aren't available, they have specialized equipment that can create artificial environments, but it's complex and appears to have significant limitations. Nothing like our standard gear. As if to prove the point, Marine Captain Diego Santos was leading a patrol across New Stalingrad's surface in conditions that would require the aliens to use their most sophisticated protective equipment. For Santos and his team, it was just another day on the job. The crushing gravity that would flatten most galactic troops was merely good exercise for humans who had trained under similar conditions their entire lives. Movement on the ridgeline, reported Sergeant Kim, pointing toward a formation of rocks that provided cover from the acid storms. Looks like someone's been watching our defensive positions. Santos raised his binoculars, standard Earth military issue designed to function in any environment a human soldier might encounter. Through the sulfuric acid haze, he could make out what appeared to be an alien reconnaissance team. Well, looks like our new friends want to see how we live. Santos keyed his radio. Base, this is Ground Team Alpha. We have alien observers at grid reference 774. Permission to make contact? Granted, Captain. Show them around. Let them see what they're dealing with. Santos led his team toward the alien position, moving with the easy confidence of soldiers who had spent their careers training in environments that most species would consider uninhabitable. The aliens, a mixed group of hegemony and crystalline troops, watched in growing amazement as the humans approached through conditions that required the aliens' most sophisticated survival equipment. Greetings. Santos called out in basic galactic standard, his voice carrying clearly through the thin atmosphere. Beautiful day for a walk, isn't it? The alien patrol leader, a hegemony officer whose name translated to something like Swift Claw, stared at the approaching humans in disbelief. They were wearing what appeared to be standard military fatigues with basic environmental protection. No powered armor, no atmospheric processors, no gravitational compensators. Just simple gear that somehow allowed them to operate effectively in conditions that were pushing the aliens' equipment to its limits. How are you functioning in this environment? Swiftclaw asked through his suit's translation system. Santos grinned. This is pretty mild, actually. You should see New Berlin. Now that's a challenging environment. 9 times standard gravity, constant seismic activity, atmosphere you could use to dissolve metal. Great place for advanced training. The aliens exchanged glances that somehow conveyed universal confusion. These humans were describing conditions that would kill most galactic species instantly, as if they were discussing vacation destinations. Your equipment, the crystalline observer noted. It appears quite simple compared to our systems. Simple and reliable, Sergeant Kim agreed. When you're operating on worlds that are actively trying to kill you, complexity is a liability. Our gear might not be fancy, but it works when it needs to work. As if to demonstrate the point, One of the alien's atmospheric processors began making warning sounds. The sophisticated device was struggling with New Stalingrad's environment, its complex systems being overwhelmed by conditions the humans barely noticed. "Here, let me help with that," offered Private Chen, producing what appeared to be a simple manual tool from her kit. Within minutes, she had the alien device functioning properly again, using techniques that seemed impossibly basic, but undeniably effective. Back in orbit, Admiral Zethkar was receiving increasingly disturbing reports from his reconnaissance teams. The humans weren't just surviving on this death world, they were thriving on it. Their entire civilization appeared to be built around the assumption that any environment they encountered would be hostile. "Sir," Commander Velox reported, "I'm analyzing the human tactical doctrines we've observed. They don't fight the way we do, obviously. They use primitive projectile weapons." "No, sir. It's deeper than that. We fight to achieve technological superiority, then use that superiority to win. They fight to achieve environmental superiority, then use the environment itself as a weapon." Zethkar studied the tactical displays showing human positions on New Stalingrad. The colonists hadn't just built defensive installations, they had turned the entire planet into a fortress, using its natural hostility as part of their defensive strategy. They're not primitive, he realized with growing horror. They're evolved. Evolved for warfare in conditions we can barely survive. As if summoned by his thoughts, Colonel Chen's voice came through on the communicate 2 weeks after the New Stalingrad incident. Emergency sessions were being held in council chambers across the galaxy. The news had spread like wildfire. The mighty Galactic Council fleet had been defeated by primitive human colonists using nothing more than fast-moving rocks and simple engineering. Admiral Zethkar stood before the emergency assembly, his forearms held rigidly at his sides as he delivered his report. The chamber was packed with delegates, military officials, and intelligence analysts, all demanding answers. The human defensive capabilities exceeded all projections, he admitted. Their weapons, while technologically simple, proved remarkably effective. Their defensive installations withstood our maximum firepower without significant damage. High Counselor Zephix floated at the center of the chamber, his ancient form pulsing with agitation. "How is this possible, Admiral? Our intelligence indicated they possessed no advanced military technology." "They don't, Counselor. That's what made them so dangerous. They built everything to survive on death worlds. What we saw as primitive over-engineering was actually military-grade construction designed for planetary-scale hostile conditions." Commander Velox stepped forward to address the assembly. "With respect, Counselors, I believe we fundamentally misunderstood what we were facing. We measured human capabilities by our standards: energy output, technological sophistication, industrial capacity. We never considered that their environmental adaptation might be a military advantage." "Explain," demanded Counselor Threx, his rocky form glowing orange with frustration. "Every human is essentially a death world survivor by our standards. Their standard equipment is designed to function in conditions that would destroy our most sophisticated systems. Their soldiers operate effectively in environments that would kill our troops in minutes." Before the debate could continue, alarms began sounding throughout the chamber. An aide rushed to High Counselor Zephix with an urgent message crystal. "Counselors," Zephix announced after reviewing the information, "we have a new crisis. Human fleets have been detected moving toward Council territories. They appear to be retaliating." The main display activated, showing tactical plots from across the galaxy. Red indicators marked human fleet movements, not toward their own colonies, but toward major Council worlds. Admiral Zethkar felt his blood chill as he recognized the tactical pattern. They're not just defending themselves, they're going on the offensive. The first reports came from the Proxima Defense Line, the heavily fortified border between Council space and the outer territories. Admiral Sektar of the Scaled Dominion was in command of the sector's defenses when the human fleet arrived. Unknown human vessels. "This is Admiral Sektar of the Galactic Council Defense Force. You are entering restricted space. State your intentions." The response came from Admiral Rebecca Rodriguez aboard the human flagship Iron Maiden. The ship looked like something built in a shipyard that specialized in constructing bunkers. Angular, heavily armored, with no concern for aesthetic appeal. "Admiral Sektar, this is Admiral Rodriguez, Earth Defense Command. You came to our worlds uninvited. Now we're returning the favor. Sektar studied the approaching human fleet with professional interest. There were only 30 ships compared to his force of over 200. The humans were outnumbered nearly 7-1. Admiral Rodriguez, you are heavily outnumbered. I suggest you withdraw before this situation escalates. Numbers don't mean much when the other guy can't hurt you, Rodriguez replied calmly. Begin the demonstration. What followed shattered every assumption the Council forces had about space combat. The human ships moved like they expected to take damage. No fancy maneuvering, no attempts to avoid incoming fire. They simply absorbed everything the Council forces could throw at them and kept coming. Their shields are still up, reported the Scaled Fury's weapons officer in disbelief. Direct hits from our main batteries and their shields are still functional. How is that possible? Admiral Sektar demanded. The answer became clear when the human ships began returning fire. Their weapons were the space-based versions of what the Council fleet had encountered at New Stalingrad. Kinetic projectiles moving at incredible velocities. But these were launched from ships that had been built to survive conditions that would destroy normal spacecraft. The first human salvo punched through the Stellar Pride's shields like they weren't there. The crystalline cruiser shattered into brilliant fragments. Its sophisticated defensive systems useless against simple physics applied with devastating effectiveness. All ships evasive maneuvers, Sektar ordered. But the humans weren't interested in a running battle. As the Council ships tried to establish fighting distance, human boarding pods launched from their vessels. The pods were nothing more than armored capsules designed to ram through enemy hulls and deposit troops inside. Boarding action on the Swift Strike, reported the ship's captain. The humans have breached our hull in 12 locations. How many attackers? Unknown, Admiral. Our internal sensors are malfunctioning. The boarding pods seem to have released some kind of interference. In reality, the interference was nothing more than simple electromagnetic pulse devices. Crude but effective technology that disrupted the sophisticated systems the Council ships relied on. What the Council crews didn't understand was that the humans had deliberately chosen simple, reliable equipment that would continue functioning even in electronic warfare conditions. Aboard the Swift Strike, Marine Captain Elena Torres led her assault team through corridors that the ship's own crew was abandoning. The artificial gravity had failed, the lighting systems were flickering, and toxic gases were leaking from damaged conduits, conditions that required the alien crew to retreat to protected areas. For Torres and her team, it was just another day at the office. They'd trained for boarding actions in far worse conditions, and their equipment was designed to function regardless of environmental challenges. Movement ahead, reported Sergeant Wong, pointing down a corridor where Council troops were attempting to establish a defensive position. The alien soldiers were wearing full environmental suits and carrying energy weapons designed for shipboard combat. They had every technological advantage. Better weapons, better armor, better sensors. It didn't matter. The humans moved through the damaged ship like they belonged there, using the hostile environment to their advantage. Where the aliens needed clear sight lines and stable footing, the humans operated effectively in zero gravity with limited visibility. Where the alien weapons were designed for precision shooting under controlled conditions, the human weapons were built to function reliably in any environment. Surrender your vessel, Torres announced over the ship's communication system. Your crew can evacuate safely. We're not interested in killing anyone unnecessarily. This is Captain Velthara. We will not surrender to primitive raiders. Your choice, Captain, but you might want to check your engine room. Velthara switched to internal sensors and immediately understood why the humans were confident. They hadn't just boarded his ship. They'd systematically taken control of every critical system. His crew was trapped in small pockets throughout the vessel while human soldiers controlled engineering, weapons, life support, and navigation. How did you take control so quickly? Training, Torres replied. We practice boarding actions on ships that are actively breaking apart in hostile environments. Your vessel is sophisticated, but it's also complicated. Complicated things break easily when someone knows which buttons to push. Across the battle zone, similar scenes were playing out on Council ships throughout the fleet. The humans weren't just winning, they were making it look effortless. Their ships absorbed damage that would cripple Council vessels. Their troops operated effectively in conditions that forced alien crews to retreat, and their simple weapons proved devastatingly effective against sophisticated defenses. Admiral Sektar watched his fleet being systematically dismantled by an enemy he had outnumbered 7-1. "Signal general retreat," he ordered. Admiral Rodriguez, he transmitted to the human commander. "We are withdrawing. There is no need for further violence." "No need at all," Rodriguez agreed. "But there's going to be plenty more of it if the Council doesn't start treating human space with proper respect." As the remaining Council ships fled toward hyperspace, Rodriguez turned to her communications officer. "Send a message to Earth Defense Command. Inform them that the Proxima defense line has been neutralized. We're ready to advance to the next phase." Back in the Council chambers, the reports were painting a terrifying picture. Human fleets were moving throughout Council space, systematically defeating forces that should have been able to crush them easily. More disturbing was the pattern of their attacks. They weren't trying to conquer territory or destroy infrastructure. They were demonstrating that they could go anywhere they wanted, defeat anyone they encountered, and leave whenever they chose. "They're not invaders," Commander Velox realized with growing horror. "They're educators. They're teaching us that nowhere in Council space is safe from them." The psychological impact was devastating. Across the galaxy, military commanders who had spent their careers confident in their technological superior. 6 months after the first confrontation at New Stalingrad, President Elena Vasquez stood in the newly constructed Earth Defense Command headquarters on Luna, looking out at the blue marble of humanity's homeworld. The communication array before her connected to every human colony, every defense fleet, and most importantly, to the Galactic Council chambers where representatives from across the galaxy waited for her response to their plea for ceasefire. "Madam President," Admiral Rodriguez reported from her position at the tactical display, "all human fleets are in position. The Council forces have withdrawn to their core systems and are requesting immediate negotiations." Vasquez nodded, studying the strategic map that showed the current state of galactic politics. In 6 months, humanity had gone from being dismissed as primitive colonists to being the single most feared military force in known space. Not through conquest or destruction, but through a series of demonstrations that had shattered every assumption about modern warfare. "What's our current position?" she asked. "Complete tactical superiority in 17 sectors," Rodriguez replied. "The hegemony has withdrawn their fleets from all disputed territories. The Crystalline Armada has requested non-aggression pacts. Even the Molten Core Syndicate is offering tribute in exchange for safe passage through human-controlled space. And casualties? Minimal on both sides. We've disabled or captured over 800 Council vessels without destroying a single ship unnecessarily. Enemy casualties are less than 2,000 across all engagements. They're mostly from accidents during evacuations." This had been the most remarkable aspect of humanity's expansion across Council space. Despite possessing weapons that could devastate entire fleets, they had shown remarkable restraint. Ships were disabled rather than destroyed. Crews were allowed to evacuate. Prisoners were treated well and released promptly. It was a calculated mercy that made humanity even more terrifying to their opponents. "They're not trying to exterminate us," Councillor Threx had been heard saying after the Battle of Kepler Station. "They're showing us that they could anytime they wanted to. That's worse than any threat." President Vasquez activated the communication array, her image appearing simultaneously in Council chambers across the galaxy. 12 different species looked back at her, their expressions ranging from fear to resignation to grudging respect. High Councillor Zefix spoke first, his ancient voice carrying across the vast distances. "President Vasquez, the Galactic Council requests immediate cessation of hostilities and the beginning of formal negotiations. The hostilities will end when humanity's territorial claims are recognized," Vasquez replied calmly. "Our terms are simple and non-negotiable. Full sovereignty over all worlds currently inhabited by human colonies, recognition of humanity as a full member of the Galactic Council, with voting rights equal to any other species, and establishment of Earth defense, command as a legitimate military force with the right to protect human interests throughout the galaxy. Those terms essentially grant you control over the most strategically valuable sectors in the galaxy." Admiral Zethkar protested. "The trade routes alone are less important than the principle," Vasquez interrupted. "You came to our worlds uninvited and threatened our people. We demonstrated that this was a mistake. Now we're offering you the chance to avoid making similar mistakes in the future." Commander Velox, who had been quietly studying tactical reports throughout the session, spoke up. President Vasquez, if I may ask, how long have you been preparing for this conflict? Vasquez smiled slightly. Commander, humanity has been preparing for this conflict since the first human looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. We just didn't know we were preparing. She gestured to the display showing Earth, its surface scarred by billions of years of natural disasters, climate changes, and evolutionary pressures that had forged humanity into something unique in the galaxy. Every human is born on a world that tries to kill them. We learn to survive in conditions that most species consider impossible. We build things to last through disasters that would destroy civilizations. We fight wars in environments that turn your most sophisticated equipment into expensive junk. But your technology, Counselor Silthara began, is designed by survivors for survival. Vasquez finished. We don't build the fastest ships in the galaxy. We build ships that keep flying when everything else falls apart. We don't make the most precise weapons. We make weapons that work when you're being shot at in a hurricane while standing in acid rain. The session continued for several hours as the details of humanity's integration into galactic civilization were negotiated. But the outcome was never in doubt. The species that had spent millennia as the galaxy's dominant powers were accepting a new reality. Humanity wasn't asking for permission to join their civilization. They were demanding recognition of their rightful place in it. 3 months later, Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the New Stalingrad, the first human ship to be formally commissioned as part of the reformed Galactic Defense Fleet. Around her, the mixed crew of humans and aliens worked with professional efficiency, though she noticed that her alien colleagues maintained a respectful distance. Admiral, reported Commander Torres, who had been promoted after his outstanding performance during the boarding actions campaign, were receiving a priority transmission from the hegemony border stations. They're reporting some kind of disturbance in the Outer Rim territories. Chen moved to the communication station, where a hegemony officer was transmitting from what appeared to be a heavily damaged space station. This is Admiral Chen of the Galactic Defense Fleet. Report your status. Admiral, thank the stars you're here. We're under attack by unknown hostiles. Our defensive fleet has been destroyed. The attackers are using some kind of energy weapons we've never seen before. They're demanding our surrender. Chen studied the tactical data being transmitted from the station. The attacking ships were sleek, fast, and armed with weapons that seemed to cut through galactic shields like they weren't there. Classic symptoms of a technologically superior force encountering less advanced opponents. How many ships are we talking about? 50 confirmed, possibly more. Admiral, our entire sector fleet couldn't stop them. We need immediate assistance. Chen looked around her bridge at the mixed crew of humans and aliens. 6 months ago, these same aliens had been preparing to force humanity into submission. Now they were looking to human protection against a new threat. Set course for the hegemony border, she ordered. Maximum speed. Admiral, Commander Torres asked quietly, shouldn't we wait for council authorization? Chen smiled, remembering a conversation she'd had with President Vasquez just before taking command. Torres, when someone threatens our galaxy, they're threatening our home. We don't need permission to protect our home. As the new Stalingrad jumped to hyperspace, Chen reflected on how much had changed. Humanity had gone from being dismissed as primitive Deathworlders to being the galaxy's protectors, not because they had conquered anyone, but because they had proven that sometimes the best defense against sophisticated threats was simple, unbreakable determination. The unknown attackers at the hegemony border were about to learn what the Galactic Council had discovered the hard way. In a galaxy full of advanced civilizations, there was something to be said for being the species that evolution had specifically designed to survive anything the universe could throw at them. Behind them, Earth continued its ancient rotation, a blue-green world that had spent 4 billion years creating the galaxy's ultimate survivors. Every human who looked up at the stars now knew they weren't looking at distant lights, but at their new neighborhood. And if anyone in that neighborhood needed help dealing with threats from the dark spaces between stars, they knew exactly who to call. The Deathworlders were on patrol now, and they had a reputation to maintain. As one alien diplomat had recently noted in his reports to the home government, we spent millennia fearing what monsters might exist in the void between worlds. It turns out the most terrifying predators in the galaxy are the ones who politely introduce themselves and ask if you need any help. The galaxy was in good hands, very strong, very competent, very dangerous hands that had been forged in the ultimate crucible of natural selection, and humanity was just getting started.